Welcome again to Brookside Bible Class Online. Thank you for joining me. My name is Stanley, and it's lovely to have you along this morning. And it's not just for young people, just whoever would like to listen in. Looking at Daniel chapter 5 today and some of those events that happened. The new king had come along. His name was Belshazzar. He was the son of King Nebuchadnezzar. And the thing that we're thinking about today is, would he learn the lessons of his father? Would he learn what his father had gone through and make a difference, a change to his life? We pick up the story here in verse 3 of Daniel chapter 5. If you have a Bible, feel free to grab one. Feel free to join me on it. It says, they brought in the golden vessels that had been taken out of the temple, the house of God in Jerusalem. And the king and his lords and his wives and his concubines drank from them. They drank wine and praised the gods of gold and silver, bronze, iron, wood, and stone. Here was Daniel and the people of God who were in Babylon. And when they had been taken, the golden vessels from the temple had been taken with them, precious to them, but also something that was precious to God as well. Something from the temple of God. And here we have the king, and he has a party, has the crowds come in, and he's going to party the night away with all his friends, all his wives, concubines, and all the rest. And he doesn't really have any care or any thought for these people or the ways of God or the things of God. And in verse 5 it says, and immediately the fingers of a human hand appeared and wrote on the plaster of the wall of the king's palace opposite the lampstand. And the king saw the hand as it wrote. And the king's colour changed, and his thoughts alarmed him, and his limbs gave way, and his knees knocked together. He literally fell apart. Here he was, this human hand, writing on the plaster, right before him, in words that he could not understand, and fear gripped the man. The time had come. Judgment had fallen upon him. The party was going to be over. And here he was perplexed and wondered, how could he answer? What was this all about? He calls the enchanters. He calls the wise men. He calls all those who he thinks can answer what is written on the wall. None of them can. The queen, she's a bit wiser. She remembers Daniel. She remembers this man who interpreted for King Nebuchadnezzar, Belshazzar's father. And so Daniel is sent for, and the king sends for him and asks for him to come. And Daniel is brought before the king. And Daniel is going to be given all these things. And Daniel is not too worried about all these things the king's going to give him. For Daniel has a message from God. And here it is in verse 17. Let your gifts be for yourself, and give your rewards to another. Nevertheless, I will read the writing to the king, and make known to him the interpretation. Daniel was a man of God. By this stage, a much older man, a man who had followed God all his days here in the land of Babylon, a man who knew God closely, and a man who knew what the judgment was about to fall. He explains to the king in the following verses all that had happened. Did you not remember? Did you not remember? Did you not remember what would happen? How your father was humbled, how he was taken into the fields, how he lived like an animal before he came back and praised the God of heaven and gave all glory to him. Verse 22 says, and you, his son Belshazzar, have not humbled your heart. He had not remembered, he had not cast back, he had not thought. And it's the same for many today. Many people cast away the things of the past. The Bible, is it old to people? Is it just a book? Is it just something that you read from the past? Or is there something more? Is this the Word of God? Is God speaking to us, to the nations, to people around us? And people are not listening. They're not listening to what has happened in the past, seeing what may happen in the future. But you have lifted up yourself against the Lord of heaven. Proud, set himself up against God. And the vessels of his house have been brought in before you. And you and your lords, your wives and your concubines have drunk wine from them. And you've praised the gods of silver and gold, of bronze, iron, wood and stone, which you do not see or hear or know. These gods that mean nothing. Why are you worshipping them? But the God in whose hand is your breath. Even as I'm breathing, speaking to you in this, the God who gives me my very breath, the God of heaven, is the one that I should remember, not the false gods of this world around me. And Daniel reminds Belshazzar here of the situation. In whose hand is your breath? God had given him life, and he was thinking nothing of it. And whose are all your ways you have not honoured? He did not honour God in the ways that he lived. And in verse 26 it says, God has numbered the days of your kingdom and brought them to an end. Here comes this, the words on the wall. Mene, mene, tekel, parson. These 4 words, and Daniel interprets them. And this is the interpretation. God has numbered the days of your kingdom and brought it to an end. Wow. You've been weighed in the balances and found wanting. If you're to look at the Old Bailey in London, for instance, or some of the courthouses, above them is sometimes a statue, and you'll see the balances of justice, equity, fairness, and how people are judged. He had been found in the balances and found wanting. He had not done what he should have done and honoured the God of heaven. Your kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and the Persians. It's the end of an empire, the end of all that he had known. In verse 30, the final verse of Daniel 5, and it says, that very night Belshazzar, the Chaldean king, was killed, and Darius the Mede received the kingdom, being about 60 years old. I want to read you just one little thing from a commentary that someone says, Belshazzar's party is thus exposed as the ultimate act of folly. He was feasting on the brink of the grave and celebrating on the edge of extinction, and he never even knew it. Think of those words just for a moment. This party exposed his ultimate act of folly, feasting on the brink of the grave and celebrating on the edge of extinction, and he never even knew it. How many people today can be in similar situations, on the edge of the grave, partying life away or whatever in life, just forgetting about God, just putting God completely and utterly out of their lives. And they're on the edge of extinction. They're on the edge of death itself. Would that be you today, even as you listen to this? Has God been speaking to you? Where are you today with God? Do you know him? How life can change in an instance. It just changed here in an instance for this man. And it can do the same for others. Sometimes it's a car accident. Sometimes it's someone with a heart attack. Even over this past year, who was ever to think of a coronavirus that would not only change a few lives here, but would change lives right around the world. This virus that came with little or no answer to it came in an instance. In Matthew chapter 24, we meet another king speaking. The king has come. And this king, of course, is Jesus. And Jesus here speaking in Matthew 24 about the future and what will happen. It says in verse 37, for as were the days of Noah, you remember those days, he built the ark and the people mocked. Mr. Noah, what are you trying to do? Building an ark? What would you do that for? Where's the rain? We're in the middle of the desert. They mocked him, but the judgment was coming. No one knew that. Noah believed God and done what God asked him. But the people didn't see what was coming. The unexpected was arriving. For as were the days of Noah, so will the coming of the Son of Man. This is talking about the return of Jesus, when he comes back. And people are unprepared. For as in those days before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day when Noah entered the ark. And they were unaware until the flood came and swept them all away. So will be the coming of the Son of Man. When Jesus returns, people will be unprepared, unexpecting what's about to happen. They'll be just carrying on life as normal, forgetting about God, many of them. Don't be like that. Stay close to the Lord. Focus upon Him, whether that's today and every day. And life can be changed so quickly. James chapter 4 tells us our life is like a mist, like a vapour. Just as you see the vapour coming out of the kettle, when you boil the kettle, we're like that vapour. We exist for that short time. During that time, we need to follow the Lord, for that mist will evaporate, disappear. And where will we go? If we've been trusting in Christ, we will go to Him, to be with Him in heaven forevermore. If not, we will be banished to a different place, to a Christless eternity without Him. Verse 42, just in closing here of Matthew 24, says, "Therefore stay awake, for you do not know on what day your Lord is coming. But know this, that if the master of the house had known on what part of the night the thief was coming, he would have stayed awake, would have not let his house be broken into." So true. If you knew when someone's going to break into your house, you've been prepared. You won't be asleep. I had a real good night's sleep last night. I think someone could have broken in, I wouldn't have known. But you lock the doors. That's why we do it. We guard ourselves against these things. But Jesus is comparing here the thief coming like a thief in the night to destroy, to take away. In verse 44, "Therefore you also must be ready. For the Son of Man is coming at an hour you do not expect." Unexpected time. The time that you do not expect. Are you ready? Are you ready if Jesus was to come back today? Are you ready if He was to call you home today? And if you are ready, stay close to Him. Stay close to His Word. Why not go back and look at Daniel 5 and Matthew here 24 and think again through those thoughts and live for Him. Live for the coming of the King and His kingdom, where those who love Him will spend eternity with Him. Thank you very much for listening. Be ready. Be prepared, even for the unexpected. God bless.